Welcome in, IDP fantasy football fans. You're listening to the IDP After Show. Hopefully, your go-to place for all things IDP as we gear up for the 2025 football season. Today, Jake Kohlhagen and I are diving deep into the IDP fantasy football weeds, looking for some players to make up our 2025 all-opportunity team. These are some players a little off the IDP radar right now in June, but could be in for some real massive seasons in just a few short months. If you're looking to get a leg up on your league mates this season, sit back, listen in, and let's get after it in this episode of the IDP After Show, because championships are won in the offseason.
This is the IDP After Show.
We're all looking for the next big breakout star, a player who's going to give us that massive positional advantage for our teams to propel us to some hardware or maybe some cold hard cash. In this episode, my good friend Jake Kohlhagen and I are going to be looking at some current trends in ADP and find some players who might get more of an opportunity in 2025. Jake, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Jeff. Like we said before, the show is a long weekend, but I truly can't think of a better way I'd like to wrap up a weekend than talking with you and talking about some of these guys that might be a little under the radar, might be a little bit of an afterthought, but can really, like you said, bring us some amazing value here for the 2025 season.
So you kind of alluded to it already, but when you were thinking about players that could make up this all opportunity team, was there anything more of your criteria that you were thinking of outside of like ADP and stuff like that? Or was there just throwing something, hoping it stuck?
Yeah, I mean, that's usually my approach, but today we had a little bit of a thought process, really kind of looked at guys that maybe didn't get as large of an opportunity last season, whether that was just playing time due to veterans in front of them, not the right fit, injuries even perhaps. Somehow, some way they didn't deliver for us in 2024. And now when we look at what they could do for us here in 2025, they have that opportunity again presented to them for whatever number of reasons. And we believe they're going to take advantage of that opportunity and deliver in a big way.
Well, I'm pretty excited about this because I had some players on my list that we had shared notes about, and I was glad you were going to mention them because if you didn't, I definitely like them. So first player we're going to dive into tonight, Jake, and who is this player for you?
I'm going to jump with Derrick Brown, defensive interior for the Carolina Panthers. Kind of alluded to this earlier, right in the beginning, right? His season was derailed due to injuries, unfortunately, right? Suffered a torn meniscus very early in the season, and it was enough to derail everything. So really, when you look at what Derrick Brown was pre-injury, right? Not much to judge in 2024, but in 2023, I mean, he had a huge breakout year for us, right? I believe over 100 combined tackles, left a little bit to be desired in terms of pass rushing stats for us and metrics, but they were still either at an average mark or slightly above. So still some opportunity for some big plays, splash plays in that front. But the guy he eats up everything on the inside, and for me, that's a massive value, especially when you look at where he's going right now in our best ball data. ADP 112, so defensive lineman 53. Talking about a DL5 now, and I know this is sleeper format, right? So not edge, defensive interior, defensive tackle, but for me, that's still a massive value for a defensive lineman who could give you upwards of 80 plus tackles throughout the season. So this injury, though, is it significant enough to give us concern? Well, for me, just doing a little bit of digging, I didn't find enough to hold me back or give me that pause, right? So we look at someone like Eric Armstead, who had a torn meniscus in 2023. His wasn't too significant. He was able to play 5 games later in their playoff run that year for the 49ers. When you look at the performance then when he came into the next year, saw a minor dip in his PFF grades and overall stats, but it was also his age 31 season. So Derrick Brown is a little far cry from his age 31 season at this point, so I don't read too much into that. You look at other players like Marlon Tuipulotu and Andrew Billings, not big names for us in IDP circles per se, but also NFL players who played in that defensive interior, suffered torn meniscus. Both of them missed significant times, either all of a season or most of a season. But when you look at how their PFF grades turned out the following year, there was either enough to show stability and or they were able to continue on past where they were at. To me, Derrick Brown's a pro. He's done it already. He's in the same system. He's comfortable with this. I believe he is going to bounce back and be very, very strong and deliver us very similar. I don't know that he'll exceed his 2023 production for us, but I think he can start to get very close to that. You also look at what the Panthers did. They added a lot of talent in that front of that defensive seven at the edges in the draft with Princely. Oh my goodness, how Princely Umanale. I probably butchered that. Nick Scorton. They added veterans in Bobby Brown, Tershawn Wharton, even Patrick Jones at the edge. So they got an influx of talent. Brown has already proven he can be an elite talent for fantasy football for us and on the field. This leads me all to believe I'm going to buy in, especially at this value. He's going to take that opportunity that he should have had in 2024 and carry it strong here into 2025 for us.
Yeah, and especially when you think about playing at a premium position, like if he a defensive tackle, like if you play in a defensive tackle league, you know, we are very much what have you done for me lately kind of managers. And Derrick Brown, unfortunately, didn't do a lot for managers last season. And so if you're a player who's played long enough, you know that from 2023, he had a fantastic season. Even at the defensive tackle spot, he was probably borderline playable in defensive line leagues, for that. So love the value, love the call there. So way to get us started, Jake. That's fantastic. I don't even know if we have to continue. We can just sign off. And thanks for tuning in. We'll check in with you next week. And no, I have to talk about one of my players this year. I'm all in on this guy. I talked about him already on a show once already this season, but a player that I'm really excited about is Mr. Jaylx Hunt of the Philadelphia Eagles. I think they really have something special brewing with this young talent. He's got all the tools. He's athletic. He's explosive. And he's probably really ready to prove himself this season again. The first thing you think about when you think of Hunt is just a freakish athlete. He's 6'4", super fast. He has all the measurables, all the things that you want. And Philly has this defensive mentality that they thrive on versatility. And Hunt as a pass rusher, he can drop into coverage. He can break up plays everywhere on the field. So I think he fits really well into this Vic Fangio defense. Fangio loves being aggressive. He loves speed. And Hunt being a former wide receiver and cornerback, just unfortunately, he grew out of the position and now he became an amazing hybrid defender. So lining him up at the edge where he can blitz, he can disguise those blitzes, he can drop back into coverage, do those tight end things. That's exactly what we want from our defensive ends, being able to make plays and make tackles. I just think that helps his floor. Finally, we all know that volume is king, and having that opportunity really matters. With some key veterans moving on, either retiring or being signed somewhere else this season, I think Hunt really could be some in line for some extended snaps this season. More reps, more production, more impact. So, Brandon Graham retired. Josh Sweat is now in Arizona. And now Bryce Huff experiment is officially over because he did sign with the 49ers just last week. So I think the key to the city is there for him. I can see Hunt easily having an 8-sack season, multiple sacks or multiple tackles for losses, and just kind of becoming that playmaker Philly kind of wants him to be. So, if the stars align for him, I think that a true breakout season is in store for him. And now I think is the time to get him. Digging into our ADP data, he checks in at the D-line 72. That's 165 overall. So even cheaper of a price than Derrick Brown is. So, Jake, I've been hurt before with players like this. So help me out here. Where am I missing? What am I not seeing?
I think the biggest thing I can think of, when I look at Jaylx Hunt and, his frame and things like that, I do wonder how well he would hold up in a run fit, over the entirety of a season, right? Does he end up being closer to a 500 snap guy, 600 snap, and doesn't really get to that elite level that we love to see? Obviously, we're not talking Max Crosby, 1,100 snaps, but edges, we love to see him around that 700-800 count. He might be good enough to get around that, though, just like you talked about. I mean, the guy can be crazy efficient in the pass rush. He showed some really great capability on the literal largest stage of the NFL season against the Chiefs. I know that's a weakened front offensive line there, but doesn't matter. He still played to a very high level. I don't know that I can talk too down to Jaylx Hunt. And if anything, this might be a great opportunity, not just for 2025, but this might be a great dynasty move overall to get in before, the stock starts to just soar up here.
I talked about too before, like he's got, Jalen Carter in the middle is like taking on double and triple teams like every single play, and that's not going to change. He's a talent of himself, but he's also got Nolan Smith playing opposite of him, who's could be very much on this list as well. And so I don't think that he has to be the guy, but he can just play his role and not have offenses scheme against him. And I think that's going to play to his advantage. So, like you said, I don't think he's going to be a Max Crosby type 1,100 snap guy, but if we can see 600-700 snaps and just being efficient, like you said, he played his best football when it was the biggest stage during the playoffs and during the Super Bowl. And so clearly Fangio loves him because they moved on from Huff, they moved on from Sweat, and really that line got really thin, over the course of from last season to now. So I can't see a way where he can't be at least the guy or one of the guys this year for Philly. So, all right. So we're going to move on from the defensive line. We're going to move to your favorite position, the defensive backs. So we're going to go late round DBs here. So thinking about opportunity, Jake, who is your first player that what comes to mind when you think of opportunity for defensive backs?
Well, we talked about Kansas City in the Super Bowl. We're going to go right back to Kansas City now with Jaden Hicks, safety for Kansas City. ADP 159, defensive back 33. We've seen this number shift, I think, a decent amount over the offseason here. Obviously, I think one of the biggest drops was when Justin Reid did leave in free agency for the New Orleans Saints. I think this speaks a lot to what Kansas City believes they have in Jaden Hicks. So I don't know that he's really truly a late round DB to honor my moniker, but he's someone that I'm very much in on, especially at value. Justin Reid, we said we saw his contract expire. He was third in box snaps in NFL among all defensive backs this last season. Jaden Hicks very likely to slide into that role full time based on what they have, as well as based on the fact that when they started to make a different switch or a little bit of a switch to the defensive alignment at the end of the season, Jaden Hicks was the person doing that. Jaden Hicks started to see more box snaps than Justin Reid. We saw Steve Spagnuolo do this previously with another younger defensive back of theirs when they had L'Jarius Sneed, who was an IDP revelation for us coming out of the corner or the slot defender role. And Trent McDuffie at the end of one season started to slide more into that and did it throughout the playoffs in their Super Bowl run. And what was he the next year? He was their primary slot defender. He was the one who was soaking up all that value that we saw in that Spagnuolo defense. Now we saw the same thing kind of happening here with Jaden Hicks, prepping for potentially the exit of Justin Reid. There's the exit of Justin Reid. Now, what does that look like? Well, Reid's averaged about between 10.5 and 12 points per game over the last two seasons. I believe that's Hicks's floor at this point, based on what he's already shown us in some of his grades. He's presented really well in run defense, regular defense, coverage grades. He thrives down in that middle part of the field. And when you look at how Reid did that, Reid pretty much lived on tackles for his production. Over the two seasons, he had 3 picks, 3 sacks, and a forced fumble, to go along with all of his tackle production. I'm very confident in Hicks's ability and my belief in him that he can deliver those 3 to 4 types of big plays at a minimum, along with a strong tackle floor. And you're looking at a guy for 12, 13, 14 points per game in your DB slot. Sign me up, man. I'm ready to jump on that train. So I think his ceiling could be even more than that too. I really like the talent, what we saw with Hicks and the playmaking ability. And you saw the Chiefs have a desire to get him on the field. Now I have a desire to see him in my lineup. So here we go for Jaden Hicks 2025.
Yeah, and I think the cost of investment, like you say, it's not a true late round, but he always seems to be in that second or third wave of defensive backs in drafts where you don't have to overpay. Right. You don't have to take him early, and he's not going to be like the Derwin James, Antonio Winfield type players. He's going to be, that second, third tier, like, oh yeah, I forgot about him. And so he's just going to be there. So I think that's a great call there too. So I really like Hicks going into next year. So kind of playing like that 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. So you kind of tied in from Jaylx Hunt to Jaden Hicks with the whole like Super Bowl Kansas City Chiefs thing. I'm going to take a player that you said that Reid went to New Orleans. I'm going to take the player that was in New Orleans and now is in the Washington Commanders uniform, and that is Will Harris. So I really like Will Harris this year just because he's going into a defense that needs some veteran presence. He's got 6 years in the NFL. He's athletic enough to hold his own. And I think that in that Commanders defensive, that secondary room, especially, they're pretty young. And Harris being a little more savvy veterans kind of can maybe step up and kind of be a Bobby Wagner-ish type leader in that secondary. So he's versatile. He's played safety. He's played corner. He can match up with the tight ends. And I think that's pretty crucial in today's NFL. Defenses are thriving on disguising their coverages and keeping offenses guessing because the offense is truly keeping the defense guessing. So it's just tit for tat. They kind of have to do that. So I really think that Joe Witt Jr. has a plan for Will Harris. They paid him more than he's the second highest paid guy in their secondary. And so we often got to follow the money when we kind of think about plays like this. So, he doesn't have a huge contract. It's only a $4 million a year contract, but compared to everyone else in that room, he's definitely going to be paid. So he's probably going to see the field. Thinking about like where the Commanders are in their secondary, they have a lot of young pieces. They got Sanistril who's there, so they're kind of looking for some identity there. So the part that I really like about Harris is that he kind of struggled at the start of last season staying healthy, but after he returned in week 10, he played nearly every single snap. And in 6 of the last 8 games last season, he had 8 or more combined tackles. So he's definitely has that high floor. He seems like a very safe floor play to me for week in and week out. And he should be playing on a very competitive team this year who should be winning late in games. And so that means more opportunities possibly as the teams are trying to throw and keep up and catch up. So Harris currently has an ADP of defensive back 118 right now. So he's basically a free space. He's like kind of one of those like super late round DBs that you can just get at the very end of your draft, kind of almost as an afterthought. He's going as the 340th overall player. So not super sexy name, not like a Jaden Hicks, not like a Jake Kohlhagen kind of kid, but, just somebody solid enough, kind of truly a late round DB. So,
yeah, no, I love it. And when you look at what Dan Quinn has always done with, multiple safeties, when he was, defensive coordinator in Dallas, obviously Jeremy Chin became, revitalized here in his last year with the Commanders too, with Dan Quinn. I don't see why everything you laid out is not a perfect runway for Will Harris to do the same, or if not, at least just really maximize his value for us when it comes to IDP. So I love the call out, and may or may not have added that as a mental note for some of my upcoming drafts. So,
all right, well, all right. So let's move on to the position that drives this big IDP machine. Let's move on to some linebackers. And Jake, who is a linebacker that you're kind of finding right now who has a true opportunity in 2025?
Yeah, I really like Akeem Davis-Gaither, linebacker for the Arizona Cardinals. I wish I had some cool connection like his dad actually was a second lieutenant commander. So that's, connecting to the Commanders from the last one. But nope, I don't have any cool segue. So we'll just roll.
He maybe drove through Washington one time.
There we go. So Akeem Davis-Gaither, very, very clear path. One of probably the path of least resistance when it comes to 3-down linebacker role here in all of the NFL right now, outside of maybe the Las Vegas Raiders. But Davis-Gaither did a wonderful job last year, in my opinion, from IDP, and a decent job from an NFL perspective when Logan Wilson was injured last year, stepping into a full-time role. Cincinnati played that a very heavy, two full-time linebackers, nearly 100%. Stepped into those 6 games, did a really, really great job, averaged just short 14 points a game, lived on tackles, almost 10 full tackles per game, really only had 1 splash play and a forced fumble. So relatively consistent. Also, I think that leaves room for a little bit of upside too. The thing that really excited me about Akeem Davis-Gaither getting this role, or the potential for this opportunity, is Jermaine Pratt, when Logan Wilson went out, initially took the green dot over in Cincinnati, but he very quickly lost that to Akeem Davis-Gaither as well. And to me, when you got a pretty seasoned defensive coordinator like Lou Anarumo, very quickly and very willingly ready to hand over, the communication and the responsibility of setting up that defense. And now he goes to a guy in Jonathan Gannon, who I think really thrives on a strong defense, strong communicative defense. I think Gaither's in line to really do some big things for us this year. Now, again, LB 37, we're not digging super deep here on this one, but I think this is just a true opportunity in the sense that Davis-Gaither was, never been a full-time linebacker in that sense for a full season. And I'm really excited to see what he will do with it this year with a strong defensive mind to help support him and grow him in this role. And I hate to buy into this narrative too much, but it really is a 1-year contract that he's got there. So I think he's got a chance to really stake his claim and make, another round for a big payday here. If, that Cardinals defense and him can really show something out here for us in 2025. So yeah, sign me up for all the Akeem Davis-Gaither for 2025.
And the narrative that you talk about too, Jake, is like he's playing, he's betting on himself, and so like we see this so many times. Guys are in a contract year, they have a breakout year, so and you said he was linebacker 37 right now. And so you're basically getting an LB4, and with tremendous upside. So
yeah,
ceiling LB2, at the floor, you're getting an LB3. I think, if he gets, we've seen very productive, in the desert. We've seen those linebackers do pretty well in the last couple of years. So no reason why Akeem Davis-Gaither can't continue that.
Yep.
I can't do a tie-in for the next player either. So outside of he's got a first name and a last name, and he plays in the NFL. So we're just going to go with that. But for me, this next guy was pretty easy when I started thinking about linebackers who are on the short list of all opportunity players. And that guy for me is SirVocea Dennis. SirVocea Dennis is playing for the Tampa Bay Bucks. I just really think he's a tremendous value, kind of going even later in drafts than Davis-Gaither is going. He came into the league as a 5th-round pick, so not super highly drafted in 2023 out of Pitt. But I think he kind of got overlooked a little bit. He's got really high football IQ. He's got some pretty decent sideline-to-sideline speed, and that kind of put him on the radar for the Tampa Bay coaches. He was pretty limited in his first 2 seasons for snaps, but takes really good pursuit angles. He's got a knack for making tackles when he needs to, and he's a borderline top 12 coverage in grades according to PFF with a 74.3. So in his limited snaps, he's already showing that he can do that. And I think his pass coverage is perfect for what they already have, because they have David there, Levante David, who's going to be the 2-down thumper, or the thumper run stopper, going to be blitzing the quarterback, where Dennis is going to be that coverage guy. So he's going to be, following the running backs, picking up the tight ends, those kind of things. So I think that's a great opportunity that he's going to stay on the field. He's not going to come off in obvious passing situations because he is a great coverage. We always have veteran departures and things like that, but I think with Dennis, the coaches really want to keep him on the field. So I think he's really poised for a much larger role this season. We think about his strengths. He's aggressive on the edge. He reads offenses pretty well for a 2nd-year, 3rd-year player. He reacts really swiftly to those plays. So I think those are all great things for him. The thing that scares me the most is I played this game once before last year with KJ Britt, and I was all in on him being the Tampa Bay linebacker to come out of nowhere, and I got burned by it. But I'm willing to double back down. I'm willing to take a chance on Love here once again. I can kind of see Dennis having, a 100 tackle season, sprinkling a couple turnovers there, and for getting him at an LB 46 price tag right now, the 107th player overall, that just screams value to me. And, if that's a late LB4, almost LB5. And if he can get, 80, 85, 90% of snaps this season on a team that's really going to score some points, is going to have some opportunities to be opposing offenses to continue to run plays against, I think I'm willing to take that chance. So Jake, talk me off of this one.
I wish I could. I love SirVocea when he was a thing, rookie year, a couple years back. Yeah, I mean, like I said, Britt was poised to take the lead. SirVocea got the opportunity when presented it. Unfortunately, injuries derailed what could have been, a 2nd-year breakout for him. But even when he was trying to make his way back, you saw that defense trying to get him back out on the field, or that coaching staff trying to get him back into that defense. There's clearly a need for it. They didn't feel a need to keep KJ Britt around. Now you're looking at guys like Deion Jones and Anthony Walker are the guys, looking to take Dennis's spot. Now, I get they're all professionals and anything can happen, but I don't know, the injection of young blood here and perhaps maybe even the setting up of, the passing of the torch from David to Dennis. And that's not saying Dennis is going to be what Lavonte David was, but he just might be being set up to take the lead on that defense here in the short term. So again, you come with a great 2025 opportunity, but we might want to be thinking a little bit beyond here, especially getting in on these ground floor values, because the value of Dennis now potentially might be the lowest it's going to be for the next 3, 4, 5 seasons.
So Jake, you bring up an interesting point here about not only are we looking for value for next season, but dynasty. And you mentioned it a couple of times. How far out, I've kind of been in this mindset of playing my IDP kind of like a redraft every year, like being willing to move on from guys. How far out, like on the offensive side, we often think about like long-term investments and things like that. But defensively, where are you at with how long to keep a guy? I know that there's those cornerstone players and things like that, but is the defense a little bit different?
I really, it's to me, it follows the layers of the defense, right? So you have that front four, you have your second level and you have your defensive backs, your third level. And that's kind of really the stability rankings of it, right? Because again, the further away from the ball you get, the less likely are you to be consistently interacting with it. And edge rushers and defensive, interior find ways to be stable for us year over year. Those are guys that the windows I like to look at for them can range anywhere between, like 3 to 6 years, because you can really get some guys that have some true staying power on your rosters from that defensive line position. Linebacker, if you can find the truly elite ones, your true top 10, top 15 linebackers in the NFL, those are guys that generally get locked in and stay in, right? You got Roquan Smith, you got Fred Warner. Those are your kind of mainstays at the top of it. But look at Bobby Wagner at 34 here. Look at Lavonte David we just talked about. I think he's 33, 34. Luke Kuechly well into his prime. I mean, I know Mike Woolard always laments about what could have been, right, if we could have enjoyed 5 more years of Kuechly just dominating NFL offenses. But you're going to get those guys, and that's the same thing then. Right now you're looking at those 3 to 6 year windows and potentially beyond. Obviously, there's outliers in all these situations. And then defensive backs I treat almost exclusively like you redraft year in, year out. I mean, maybe if you get a Kyle Hamilton or a Brian Branch somehow because they fall to you in a rookie draft value, or just your league's goofy for some reason and letting them float around out there. Those are guys that, you can latch onto for a couple of them that can last longer, but there's not a ton. Derwin James, obviously Macri would be mad at me if I didn't mention him. So that it kind of, like I said, it flows through those levels because that's where we see the stability in our fantasy production, right? Defensive line tends to be more stable year over year. Linebackers, we have a core group that tend to maintain it. And then defensive back tends to be a lot more volatile.
If you're looking at like a draft pick value right now, if you're going to try to maybe either acquire like an Akeem Davis-Gaither or SirVocea Dennis, what kind of draft pick value are you thinking?
If I'm working with a trade partner, maybe a little stubborn, but I feel like I'm contending, I feel like my third's going to be a late third. I'd be willing to go as high as that, but obviously beyond that, I'm going to try to pitch it. Hey, I'm looking for a 1 year rental, really, right? There's no guarantee for Davis-Gaither there. Jonathan Gannon's got no, guaranteed seat there. So that coaching staff could be out next year. And that means they have no ties to keep Akeem there. So that's the kind of narrative I'm trying to present. But like I said, if I feel like I got a strong team and this is the piece I need to round it out and or give me the depth I need to survive injuries and bye weeks, yeah, I'd go as high as a late third.
The Super Bowl is the biggest event in sports, but Jalen Carter makes big plays and very few fantasy gamers care. That's going to change with the D-Up contest on Fast Draft. You draft 6 defenders. The top 4 enter your lineup every week. You can draft up to 30 teams. There's a $10,000 prize pool. And if you love Aiden Hutchinson, you can get big exposure to that guy. And every time he's making plays for the Lions, you're making money. It's such an easy game to play, and it's so fun to sweat both sides of the ball on Sundays. Of all the Fast Draft contests, it's the D-Up game that I think is going to really change how people play fantasy. Now, use your host promo code to get a $50 deposit match when you deposit on Fast Draft. So, let's start drafting faster.
Okay. Well, maybe this next guy is also worth a late third for you. Another linebacker. Who's your next linebacker, Jake?
Oh boy, this is calling back to some people's real favorites, and some people really wanted this to be a thing, and all they had to do was wait until 2025 for Jack Sanborn, linebacker, Dallas Cowboys. So he's going just inside our top 100 right now at ADP 98 and linebacker 43. This is, I mean, everyone wanted this, right? Give Jack Sanborn a chance. Look what he did when he was starting, all these great things. And that's what the early reports are. Early reports is he's the guy wearing the green dot. He's the guy who knows where to be. He knows where to get everyone else to be. And when that Dallas defense had someone like that last year in Eric Kendricks, all he did was just rack up tackles for that defense just time after time after time. And they still like to blitz out of that A gap a lot with those inside linebackers and really force opportunities that way as well. And even Eric Kendricks, you know, in his older statesman age, found ways to deliver splash plays for us still too. Overshown's likely out most of the season, or at least a good chunk of it. They have Kenneth Murray. I'm not excited about Kenneth Murray. He is a jag in my opinion, which is disappointing for his draft capital and everything people thought he could be. So when I look at that linebacker room, to me it's Jack Sanborn, and whenever Overshown gets back. But until that time, I think Sanborn's going to lock down that role. I think he's going to deliver for us the fantasy goodness we saw when we look back over the last 2 seasons in the 7-game sample where he had an opportunity to play 80+% of the snaps. This was his actual fantasy production in Big 3 IDP scoring. He started off with an 8.75, then 34.3, 15.75, 21.5, 15.75, 10.75, 14.5. This guy did nothing but deliver for us when he was a starter. I get why people wanted him to be that. He wasn't. He now has that opportunity. It's truly being presented to him. So I'm sure some of this value is some of that previous hype. And you know what? I think I'm gonna get on the bandwagon for this one. He's shown nothing but consistent PFF grades for us too in that 65+ range, which when I look at linebackers, right, linebackers I feel like get eviscerated by PFF scores. They have one of the toughest positions to play. They're in the middle of the field where everything is going on all at the same time and they have to process everything. So if you can sit at that 65 to 70 range, to me, you are a capable starting NFL linebacker, and I think you're going to be out there for 100% of your snaps, especially wearing that green dot. And he's someone who's shown he can be a playmaker in the middle of a defense before for the Bears. And that was I would say a talent depleted defense compared to what the Cowboys have. Cowboys definitely have a bit more to work with, I think, overall compared to when Sanborn was running as a green dot for Chicago. I think he's set up in a situation where he's going to deliver some real fantasy production. And I think we could be looking at, like talked about before, with Gaither being ceiling of LB2. I think Sanborn could be sniffing high LB2, maybe even, the back end of the LB1.
Yeah, when we're thinking about these type of players like your Davis-Gaither, Dennis, Sanborn, they're all kind of right around that like early LB4 right now for ADP. And if you can get a couple of them, like it just increases your chances of at least one of them hitting. And then if they become like your LB2, LB3 with upside every week, I think your teams like that are going to go over the top. And like you said, if you're investing in a third, which is more than likely going to be late, if you're having a successful season, if you're investing in players like this is definitely the move to make. If you're rebuilding or a team, this is not this isn't the recipe for you right now. So, but I think if you can hit on one or two of these players, like they're just going to put you over the top, especially with their current value. And then you have the resale, in the off season, then you can always turn it over and run it back again. So stay tuned for June of 2026, all opportunity team. So, well, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, no, I really like Sanborn too. Like just seeing him out there with the green dot on, that there are certain people that really get excited about that kind of thing. And it's June, but it's better to see it than not see it. Everyone right now is in the best shape of their life. Everyone right now is healthy, things like that. So, but it's worse when you don't see those things, like when you don't hear players like, oh, I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm out there wearing the green dot, then there's players out there that aren't healthy right now. There's players that aren't wearing the green dot right now. And so that's kind of a telling sign as well. So better to have than have not. So.
Right. It's was it Sigmund Bloom, right? Always listening for that drum beat, right? If it's a constant positive drum beat, don't don't, like, I'm going to trade a second to go get Jack Sanborn, right? Like, don't overreact to this, but realize those narratives, realize those outcomes are looking much more positive overall for these individuals.
Yeah, especially like in June, because there's really, there's nothing to gain really right now. So, but all right, another player that I'm really excited about. I find myself having multiple shares of right now, and I'm still trying to acquire him everywhere I can. And that is Jaylon Carlies, linebacker, and in some cases and in some leagues, a defensive back for the Indianapolis Colts. So I really think I'm kind of getting sucked into this dual designation right now. He's one of the really intriguing pieces as we sit here, like we said in the beginning of June. He's got such huge upside this year, especially if you can get him as a defensive back. He's got great ball tracking skills. He's a former defensive back in college out of Missouri. He's obviously very good in coverage because of that background that he has, but he's also really solid in run support. And so the Colts saw the potential, obviously, and they took a chance on him. They felt comfortable enough to let EJ Speed go, who had a really wonderful statistical season last year for the team. He left to go to Houston. And so Nick Chubb, too, got some reports today that Nick Chubb might be going to Houston, might be chasing a ring. Yeah, okay. Corner Jake, here we go. But now we think about this entering 2025. Everything is lining up for him. Take that next big leap. Kind of becoming maybe, like you had mentioned earlier about that foundational piece, like not only a 2025 piece, but going forward. We know that Zaire Franklin isn't getting any younger. He's in his 7th or 8th season already. He's coming off an ankle surgery, cleanup procedure kind of deal. But the NFL is really loving these hybrid safety linebackers to play right now because they got all these moving, passing pieces and parts of the offense. So that's just the way the NFL is going. So the defense has to react to that. He's a hard-hitting defender. He's got the size and range to play deep. He can play near the line of scrimmage. I like that he's not going to come off the field in passing situations, and that's something that the Colts don't like to do anyway. They like to keep their linebackers on the field all the time. We saw that last year with both Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed playing well over 1,000 snaps last season. EJ Speed had over 140 tackles last season. So it's not out of the realm of possibility as long as the Colts don't bring in a free agent here. And I know there's still some decent ones out there, but the later we get into June and training camps and OTAs and things like that, I feeling much more confident that Carlies is going to be the guy next to Zaire Franklin this season. And talk about a league winner, especially if you can get him as a defensive back and he's putting up, those 7, 8, 9, 10 tackle games, that floor at a very, like you mentioned earlier, the further you get away from the football, the less likely you are to repeat from season to season. But if you can get, a defensive back that's getting 7, 8, 9 tackles, that floor is so high. Can you imagine starting a team with Carlies and Travis Hunter as your defensive backs and they don't even play the position that they're starting on your team? That'd just be nuts. Carlies, like you mentioned too, he's right in that late 4th round. He's a LB 48 right now, 110th overall. And I just think he's got cheat code upside right now. So that's where I'm at with him.
Yeah. That's, I love the game theory of it. Sleeper is, the platform I think you're referencing most here. I know for a fact has him as that LB defensive back dual designation.
So does CBS right now too.
Oh, CBS too. There you go. Look at that. So
yeah.
If you are in either of those leagues and you are in a dynasty format and you are not actively pursuing Jaylon Carlies for your roster, you are making a mistake, friends. But no, he absolutely is. And I don't know. I love how Indianapolis just always finds these like second linebackers on these teams, and Bobby Okereke, right? He went on to at least really do some really cool things. But then, EJ Speed came in, and then, now Jaylon Carlies stepping up here. This is really cool to see what they continue to produce out of there in those LB2 spots. But this, 140 tackles in your defensive back spot. That alone, done,
right.
Sold, right?
Yep. Wasn't Zaire Franklin like undrafted free agent or like super late round pick too? He wasn't a very go ahead.
He was a core special team player that I think, and then Shaq Leonard was or Darius Leonard, whatever he was at the time, like kept dealing with injuries and couldn't stay on the field regularly. And Zaire Franklin came on week 1, took 100% of the snaps in the green dot and just never looked back. And it was just, It was that simple between the injuries and his ability to be out on the field consistently. And I got all these basketball camp things coming up in my head. Be out on the field consistently and deliver consistently.
So another player, Jake, that you like to kind of deliver consistently. We're getting to a little cornerback. Little Johnny the Greek is smiling somewhere right now. Who you got as one more player for you for the all opportunity team?
Well, this one's for Eric Harms because he would be sad at me if not for me mentioning my dear friend, not actually my friend. I just consider him that, in my mind. Kyler Gordon. He doesn't know, right? Kyler Gordon, cornerback, Chicago Bears. He's sitting at ADP 188 or 181 for us. Defensive back 43. So again, not crazy late, right? We're talking, mid-late DB4 in your rosters. However, again, this is someone I think is going to have the opportunity to exceed what they've already shown us. And this, when I look at him, he got Matt Eberflus as a defensive coach or a head coach, but a defensive minded one who really maximized what there was with Kenny Moore in Indianapolis, right? Kenny Moore became this great revelation. He was a starter all the time for us as a cornerback in defensive back leagues. He was a stud for us in cornerback required leagues. Really, they drafted Kyler Gordon hard. Loved Kyler Gordon high. Loved the talent. Got all excited for it, and just didn't get a chance to really deliver to that level like we saw with Kenny Moore. Enter Dennis Allen, new defensive coordinator now after the coaching staff change. This is someone who I think really knows how to maximize talent at that slot defender spot, because you look exactly what Dennis Allen was able to do last year with Alontae Taylor and Ugo Amadi. When Alontae Taylor was in that spot, in that slot defender role, weeks 1 through 8, he averaged nearly 18 points a game. Granted, week 1 was inflated with a 3-sack game. He had 40-plus points. Everything else behind that, though, he was like 11 and 12 was his floor for you from the cornerback position, right? Well, then injuries, whatever, he had to shift around. Enter Ugo Amadi. Who you ask, right? Well, you guys probably know because you listen to us and you knew who to get last year on the waiver wires. But a relatively unknown defender steps into that slot defender role. And what did he do in weeks 9 till the end of the season? He averaged just under 13 points per game. Again, that's awesome in my defensive back spot. If I can have a floor of 13 points all the time in one of my defensive back slots, and I'm picking these guys up as late as we're talking about, to me, again, that feels like I'm stealing from my league mates at that point. Now, Kyler Gordon, he only showed us 9 points per game last year when it came to his role with Matt Eberflus in that defense, but he did show his best PFF grades. And this is what gets me excited. This guy, in my opinion, Kyler Gordon, knows where to be. He knows how to be around the ball. He's not afraid to get his hat on the ball to try and make a play. He gets in there in the run game. I'm very, very excited for him to have a dedicated defensive coordinator like Dennis Allen, who is going to just maximize the crap out of that talent from Kyler Gordon out of that slot role. I wouldn't be surprised to see him, I wouldn't be probably upwards of 25, 30 pass rush opportunities, if not more, come throughout the season. I think that he's just going to get after the ball with Kyler Gordon one way or another. And I'm ready for him to take advantage of that opportunity and show us exactly what he can be. And I think that's a top level cornerback IDP asset.
We often talk about, like cornerbacks being too good. Is Kyler Gordon too good? Does he have, like right now, I think Tyreek Stevenson is playing opposite of him. Is he too good to where he's not going to get enough opportunity? Because like you reference the PFF scores and he's efficient and doing all the right things. Is he getting too good to kind of get not enough opportunity, Jake?
That's a great question. And my I guess concern quelling to that is Kyler Gordon plays enough in the middle of the field in that primary slot defender role that quarterbacks really don't have an opportunity to say no to the middle of the field, right? When they're getting rushed quickly for some reason, there's a blitz or, someone in the front wins quickly or fails quickly from the offensive side, quarterback's going to go to the middle of the field, right? And that's exactly where Kyler Gordon's going to be the vast majority of the time. Now, TJ Edwards is a talented individual in there. Tremaine Edmonds is good enough. I still think Gordon's going to be getting involved in a lot of those opportunities, whether it's passing or running as well. And so I think even if he plays some of his best coverage defense of the year, I still find him to be someone who, based on how offenses run and what they're going to need to do, he's still going to be able to deliver for us.
Oh, I like that idea. And you've always been the go-to guy for the slot corner spot. You just kind of a year ahead on all these guys. So do yourself a favor, pick yourself up some shares of Kyler Gordon on your way out on the dance floor. So, all right, my last player here, Jake. You're gonna have to start cueing the Game of Thrones music because I think winter is coming. Actually, Dee Winters is coming. So, probably one of the most underrated players on the San Francisco team on defense right now is probably Dee Winters. I think he's got all of the tools to kind of break out in 2025. He went to TCU, kind of flew under the radar there, but he landed really in an ideal situation. San Francisco has just been a factory for linebackers over the last, decade. You think back to Patrick Willis, and then Patrick Willis passed the torch, and it was Fred Warner, and then there was Dre Greenlaw was there, and now it's just kind of like, who's the next guy? And I think right now maybe it could be Dee Winters. He's explosive, he's quick, he's got a nose for the football, he's got great sideline to sideline speed. He's got pretty good instincts for a player that's young as he is. He thrives in a defense that can attack the ball. And with Robert Saleh coming back as the defensive coordinator, I think he really could unlock Winters with using his skill set. Now we know that Fred Warner is going to remain the heartbeat of this defense, but like we have seen, there's always been enough room for two linebackers to be relevant in the San Francisco defense. And so, whether it was Patrick Willis and Warner, whether it was Warner and Dre Greenlaw, both of those players were always perennial, at the top of at the linebacker position. So, more than capable of supporting two linebackers there. I love the way the 49ers play their defense. They're just ready. They're coached up well. And I think Saleh is a better defensive coordinator than he is a head coach, and he's going to get the most out of his players. So, I know that the 49ers invested a 3rd-round pick in Nick Martin. They also brought in Lou Gifford from Tennessee, but I just think that right now the hype with the rookies is always a little bit more than we want it to be. Last year we saw Junior Colson, who was drafted like in probably the most ideal situation when it comes to a linebacker, got the draft capital. He went to his former coach, and he still kind of flamed out, so all of these things played into Junior Colson being like the linebacker that couldn't fail, but he failed. And it just seems like we haven't had a rookie linebacker really step up and do what we expect them to do. And, Nick Martin getting 3rd-round draft capital is good, but I don't think it's like bulletproof, and so I really think that a player like Winters, who was in the system before, knows the plays. He's done very, very well for himself. I think he's just going to have an opportunity. He did play in 15 games last season. He was 3rd on the team in snaps. But the best part of the season came in his last 3 games. Winters started and played in the last 3 games. He racked up 16 solo tackles and 5 combined tackles over that time. So that's like a 7 tackles a week for an average. So that's pretty solid. Another reason I really like Winters is he's amazing at pass coverage. And if he wasn't lining up against or alongside maybe the best linebacker in pass coverage, he'd be probably getting a little more praise, but he's just kind of getting overshadowed, obviously, because Warner is Warner, but he does an extremely good job of pass coverage, and that's going to keep him on the field just like the other guys. He's not going to come off in obvious passing situations. And so for me, the needle is definitely pointing up for Winters this offseason. Right now he's linebacker 98, 443rd. So he's a free space. I know right now the hopium is with the rookie, with Nick Martin and stuff like that. But I think Winters has a great opportunity to step up and be a solid play this season.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And based on what I've seen from Saleh as a coach, a defensive coach, and just as kind of overall how he approaches things, I see him giving the nod to Dee Winters to start. I think Nick Martin kind of projects more as a strong side type of linebacker, where when they're in true 3-down sets, yep, he's going to come in there. He's going to try to take on, that pulling tight end or whatever type of scenario, pulling guard that they're trying to set up on the strong side of the offense. I just don't know that it's going to be more than that, though, to start for this rookie year. Perhaps he finds a way to win over the coaching staff by midpoint in the season, but I think I would say that's optimistic, really, at this point in the offseason. So I would encourage people, if they really feel that strongly about it, if they can find a way to handcuff themselves at this point to both Dee Winters and Nick Martin, if you really got to ride the Nick Martin train here in year one. But if I'm a betting man and I like to kind of spread out my chips here a bit, I would put him on Dee Winters and look for an opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah, and the price tag is like he's probably available in your league right now. Even in leagues that I was looking today, I've got some leagues that start 4 linebackers and he was still available, going as the almost 100th linebacker in leagues. There's a good chance that he's probably out there. And like you said, put a chip or two down on Winters. And if he pans out, great. If not, the cost of investment was 0 right now for you. So. All right, Jake. So kind of our take on this year's 2025 All Opportunity Team. You got any final thoughts about this episode as we kind of wrap this up, as far as thinking about these players, other players, strategies right now for players or managers to be kind of considering? As we sit here beginning of June, we got training camps, OTAs kind of going on, but the real stuff doesn't come on until later in July.
Right. I think at this point in the season, again, this isn't where you're going to win your league right now, but this is an opportunity where you can make lots and lots of fantasy profit, in my opinion. If you can get in on these guys while the getting is good, while it's either they haven't taken off because all the camp buzz, or their starters week 1, or they put up, big numbers in the start of the season, get in on the ground floor in these guys now when their opportunity is perceived and not fully known and realized. That's how you're going to be able to go ahead and take a Jack Sanborn, right, or a Jaylx Hunt, and get them now and use them to propel your team to success. Hopefully, you talked about bringing home that hardware and or some hard cash with it, but you can't do that as well if you're not paying attention here in June and trying to make some of those moves ahead of time as you can if you're just jumping back in here late August and okay, well, what do I got to do? Okay, I got to catch up on everything and try to process all these things, make all these moves, or other people have already made the moves. And yeah, and I really look at it from a dynasty perspective. Scott always talks about this when he does his state of the IDP survey, and he got, I don't know, 100,000 something different leagues he looked at this year. 90% of them with the IDP into them are dynasty based. So a lot of what we look at and what we talk about should come through that lens. It's not to say there's not redraft, right? Everyone's got their redraft leagues and nothing wrong with that. But a lot of our focus does tend to shift towards that dynasty market. And so capitalize on those things now. And maybe that's through trades or through waiver wires or whatever. Like you said, Dee Winters is still sitting out there, and now you're going to be able to capitalize and enjoy that smart move here at the beginning of June. So.
Well, I think too, Jake, when you said the investment on some of these players is like 3rd or 4th round picks now in June, but maybe in July, that same player, hey, he's out there running with the ones all week to start training camp. Now, all of a sudden, that player that you could have gotten for a 3rd or 4th now might cost you a 2nd, and now like 2/3 all of that upside. You lost all of that ceiling for them because you have such an investment already tied into them. Whereas like a late 3rd, 4th round pick, there's a great chance that player doesn't even make your final roster. He might be cut, so a player like that right now, then, flip them later on. So,
I mean, you talked about it perfectly, right? Like Scott and I just talked about some of dynasty rookie data from some of ours that we've done through the summer so far. Nick Martin was going like 36, 37 overall in that small subset of data. So again, you're talking early 4th round pick, Nick Martin. You could spend that 4th round pick on him, or you could just go to your waivers for free and get Dee Winters, who we both believe has the leg up to at least start the season. And now you can use that 4th to go trade for someone else, to pick someone else that maybe gives you a dart throw in a different position or roster construction. I mean, that's how you make smart moves that build out your team to be sustained dynasty success, is by having the wherewithal to realize, hey, I got a free 4th rounder sitting over here on waiver wires, and then I can go spend my other 4th rounder on something else.
And it's funny, you think about this time last year, Zach Bond easily could have been on an episode like this, and no one was even thinking about him being anything. And now he's like considered LB1 in that top 5 dynasty LB rankings right now. And like, he was a player that easily could have been right next to Akeem Davis-Gaither or Jack Sanborn this time last year. So yeah, it really pays to to get in on these players early. So well, I know that Scott, Jake, you were mentioning like Scott, and you were thinking about investments and all this data. So tell us what you're doing with all of the D-up stuff and all the other best ball stuff that's going on right now.
Absolutely. So obviously we have the best ball drafts that we do here with the IDP show. We're consistently putting those out. You can always look for Twitter or X or whatever you call it for opportunities there, especially our good friend Eric Harms of the show. He tends to spearhead a lot of those. Scott and I doing a lot of digging into the new fast draft D-up contest that was out there. So we got our first true, like full dedicated best ball platform specifically for IDP. It's super quick and super easy to get into. It's a $10 price point per draft. All you got to do is draft 6 IDPs, no position requirements, literally any 6 you want. There's 10 other teams, or there should say there's 9 other teams with you in there. So 10 total, 60 players. You're not going super deep where you got to know who the third, starting cornerback is for the Washington Commanders. Just getting in there, having some fun, up to $10,000 in prize. We're well over halfway full for that one. Might find a way to sneak in a second D-up contest here yet this summer with Fast Draft app if things keep rolling the way they have been. Listen to the IDP draft show where we talk about those different best balls. We talk about combined best balls, yada, yada, yada. I'll stop because I could probably keep going on for hours here. But yes, check out IDP drafts for all that type of content and stuff with Scott and myself.
And be sure to check out the promo code too through the website, because then that, like you'll get the bonus and just it's playing with house money then. So
yep. Yeah. IDP show, all one word, get you up to a $50 match. So you put in 50, you get 50. That's simple. Now you got 10 D-up entries and you can win a lot of those that don't feature myself or Scott because we're amazing.
So if you see them in the fast draft, make sure you just push the little button on the top right-hand corner to X out and just wait a little bit till the next one starts up. So yeah, do yourself a favor. So, all right. Well, Jake, I appreciate it. That's going to do it for this episode of the IDP After Show. Thank you, Jake, for coming on and talking about some of his favorite players who made up his all-opportunity team heading into the 2025 season. Next time, I'll be joined by some guy named Bobby Reynolds, and we'll be breaking down the AFC and NFC West teams as we kick off our divisional preview episodes. To make sure you don't miss that or any of the other outstanding episodes here at the IDP Show, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you'll never miss an opportunity to hear Jake, Scott, or many of the other players talk about some of their favorite footballs. So if you like this episode, make sure you hit that thumbs up button as well so that we know what type of content to keep rolling out. For Jake, I'm Jeff. We say thank you for listening, and we'll catch up with you next time.
This was the IDP After Show.